This morning, let's get right to it. Does President Trump have the ability, have the authority to declare a national emergency, have the military build his wall?
Well, unfortunately, the short answer is yes. There is a provision in law that says the president can declare an emergency. It's been done a number of times, but primarily it's been done to build facilities in Afghanistan and Iraq. And in this case, I think the president would be wide open to a court challenge saying, where's the emergency? You have to establish that in order to do this. But beyond that, this would be a terrible use of Department of Defense dollars. The president spends most of his time talking about how we're not spending enough on national security. Now he wants to take $20 billion out of the defense budget to build a wall, which, by the way, is not going to improve our border security. The president seems unaware of this, but we've actually already built a wall across much of the border. And all border security experts that I talk to say where a wall makes sense, it's already been built. We should have a conversation about national security, about border security. But first, we should reopen the government and start paying our Border Patrol agents and the other 800,000 federal employees who are furloughed.
We saw the Chief of Staff, White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, now say the president is willing to give on a concrete wall. He wants it to be steel instead. Are they giving you something you can work with there?
No, I mean, because the president really doesn't understand the issue. And actually, there was a great quote from Mulvaney from a couple years ago where he said, you know, he was critical of then candidate Trump's comments about a wall, saying, look, a wall is sort of a childish response to the problem. If you understand what's happened in border security, we've like quintupled the border security budget in the last 15 years. And by the way, it's been fairly effective. But we've invested in Border Patrol agents. We've invested in drones, in airplanes, in sensors, in technology. A concrete barrier is not going to automatically stop people from coming.
Democrats have supported some barriers, and the president's out tweeting this morning. He said, he's quoting President Barack Obama, Senator Barack Obama. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked. And then I voted when I was a senator to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in. That's Hillary Clinton. So you voted for barriers in the past. So any concern that this hard line is going to backfire?
Well, no, because, and that's the point. The wall is not in itself a bad idea. It's just, it's been done. And what the president has not done is he has not made the case that on the portions of the border where a wall has not been built, how is a wall going to actually enhance border security? There is no evidence whatsoever that that's necessary, and yet he's willing to shut down the government and stop paying Border Patrol agents, and in many cases, you know, stop all the efforts that we have made to enhance border security over a campaign promise. And a campaign promise, as you pointed out, that Mexico was supposed to pay for. He is shutting down the government to break his signature campaign promise.
Let's talk about the
campaign promise was that the taxpayers weren't going to have to pay for it.
Let's talk about the broader agenda. You said you want to hold hearings in the Armed Services Committee on President Trump's politicization of the military. What does that mean exactly, and who will you call?
Well, what we've seen is when the president talks to troops, I mean, he has campaign rallies when he's talking to troops. I don't think you should use the military to advance your agenda. Every other president before this, when they've worked with the military, when they've talked to the troops, it's been about national security. It's been about their service. But when President Trump talks, it's about his campaign, about how bad the Democrats are. We need civilian control of the military, and we need to separate those things. But the main thing that I want to focus on in the hearings that we have coming up once we get our committee set is transparency and oversight. You know, why did the president send 5,600 troops, active duty troops, to the border? What was the purpose of it? What is his policy in Syria and Afghanistan, as he's now talking about? Out. There's been a lack of transparency and an explanation for what his national security strategy is. We want to make sure that the officials at the Pentagon and the White House let Congress know, and that we work together to develop a coherent national security strategy.
You mentioned Syria. We all know that the former Defense Secretary James Mattis, General Mattis, resigned in protest. And part of the Syria decision also made it clear he could no longer go along with the president's approach to treating our allies and dealing with our adversaries. Will you call former Secretary Mattis?
I would like to. Now, I understand and I respect that a president has a right to private counsel from his top advisors. I'm not going to call former Secretary Mattis to say, you know, what did the president say about this? What did he do about that? But Secretary Mattis is one of the most knowledgeable, capable experts we have on defense policy and foreign policy. His views on what we should be doing around the world would be invaluable for members of our committee. So we'd love to get his perspective on a wide variety of issues.
And what should we be doing in Syria right now? The president announced he wanted to withdraw, but we just saw the National Security Advisor John Bolton today say that the United States now is not going to withdraw our troops until Turkey promises to protect the Kurds, until we're certain that ISIS is defeated. Do you know what the policy is right now, and do you support it?
I don't think anybody knows what the policy is right now. And that's part of the problem, and what I think Secretary Mattis did a decent job. Our allies matter enormously, and the president treats them like dirt. He insults them regularly, does not consult them, makes radical decisions via Twitter, and then changes his mind the next day. Look, the world is big and complicated. The U.S. is not going to be able to do everything on our own. We need allies. We need people to support us. He's alienated them across the board. And in Syria, the 2 points that John Bolton made are obvious. Those are the 2 big concerns we have. We don't want ISIS to rise again and be a transnational terrorist threat, and we don't want our allies, the Kurds, to be slaughtered by Erdogan in Turkey. I mean, that was obvious ever weeks ago it was when President Trump, apparently on a whim, tweeted out, "We're getting out of Syria." So, you know, I'm pleased that John Bolton has recognized the national security interest, but that's what we want to have on the Armed Services Committee, not a tweet going, let's get out of Syria. Let's have a discussion about all the different pieces that are necessary to meet U.S. national security interests and make an informed decision.
Finally, let's talk about impeachment. A couple of your Democratic colleagues have already filed articles of impeachment in the House. We also saw your new colleague, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, say this.
I stand by impeaching the President of the United States. I ran on that. It's probably exactly how my grandmother, if she was alive, would say it.
That's the cleaned-up version of what she said, right, to move on. What was your reaction to that? And are you concerned the Democrats may be pushing this too far, too fast?
I don't think we're pushing it too far, too fast. The Congresswoman represents a constituency that has every right to be very angry at President Trump. And many politicians throughout the history, in fact, I think Vice President Cheney very famously used a similar word to Senator Patrick Leahy on the floor of the United States Senate. People get passionate about their politics, so I don't think it makes a great deal of difference exactly how she said it. I wouldn't have said it that way, but the most important point here is impeachment is an unbelievably serious undertaking. No president has ever been removed from office. And if you do this, you are substituting the judgment of the voters for the judgment of Congress. Now, if the crimes are serious enough, it needs to be done. But we need to be very deliberate, very serious, and very careful about how we do this, mindful that the president will not be removed from office unless 67 senators affirm or convict on the impeachment. So we need to see Mueller's report, and we need to make a very, very strong case if there is one to be made. This is not something that should be rushed or done hastily, but it's a serious obligation of Congress. If the president has committed the crimes that we've seen considerable evidence that he has committed, we need to take that seriously. But it's something that we're going to have to wait for Mueller's report and do it in a serious way.
Congressman, thanks for your time this morning.